you often have a lot of thoughtful comments on Facebook during this era, well, even previous to this, but especially now as well. What are some of the more intriguing issues that you've dwelled on when you think about coronavirus vis-a-vis ophthalmology?
Well, I think with regards to ophthalmology, I think for now, but I think once we get over this, I think it will kind of streamline things the way it should. In the last 2 or 3 years, we've been, because we're quite actively involved within ophthalmology, in terms of supporting academic events. And one of the things we were realizing is that there were too many physical academic events that were being planned. So maybe in a way, this may be just a blessing in disguise that once, the OPDs and the OTs restart, doctors would, spend less time in physically traveling to attend, all of these academic events and giving, presentations and traveling thousands of miles to just give one presentation, and kind of stay more locally. So I think it may be a change for the better. We definitely need physical meets, but I think they will be limited and restricted, in the era of, social distancing, whereas they'll be more locally tailored. But yes, the boom of kind of online education will obviously be seen, and I think it's already being seen in not just ophthalmology, but in many other fields of medicine.
Well, of course, we have the WC coming up in some months, which is going to be virtual. I think that will be a nice test run to see how a major virtual meeting does. What's your impression of how that will go?
Well, I have, the WOC, we were also one of the uh, uh, supporters of the WOC, and I've also been in some of the industry meetings which were carried out on Skype and Zoom. And I think it'll be a pleasant surprise. I think it'll be easier than what people think it is. I know that a lot of people have a little mental block on having an entire ophthalmic conference online, but I think it'll surprise a lot of people. And I think once you get used to it, I think that may be the way to go. Obviously, yes, it's a new challenge, it's a new test, and only time will tell how successful an online conference of that magnitude would be. But I think it's probably the way forward, and at least the way forward, for the next year or two, until we get a vaccine for COVID-19. There will be a requirement to plan online conferences. So this will be the first and probably the best test in ophthalmology.
A number of the societies in India, in terms of the digital content, AIOS was really the last meeting to take place this year physically. DOS, the Delhi Ophthalmological Society, shortly thereafter was unfortunately canceled. But I've seen, again, you're coming into it, I believe it might have been DOS, but other events, YOSI as well, to help promote those digital meetings throughout India. What has been the result of that, in your opinion, as far as education goes?
Yeah, I think, so far they have been very successful. We have partnered in India with the national and the state ophthalmic associations. Internationally, we've also hosted the WSPOS webinar, and that's also, more of them are being planned currently. In fact, the WSPOS webinar, I think, was deemed to be, I think, the single largest academic event in pediatric ophthalmology and strabismus, for a long time. So I think there's a lot of interest in webinars. Obviously, they'll need to be streamlined. I think there's far too many of these right now.
Yeah.
But I think moving forward, they will be spaced out, because right now there's a lot of people have much more time on their hands because they're at home. but once their practice starts, they will be spaced out. And I think that will be one of the main stream forms of academics or further academics in ophthalmology.
A number of the different webinars going on around the world. Um, Obviously, because people are just starting to use this form a lot more, there's often some technical difficulties. But what I've seen out of India with what you've been doing with AIOS, it's come through very nicely. You know, it often pops up into, I want to say, either my Facebook or LinkedIn feed as something that's happening live. I click on that, and by and large, you know, the speakers are coming through relatively clearly. The slides are advancing well. Do you have to have a major infrastructure set up in order to do all that, or are you using a certain platform like, you know, GoToMeeting or something that's standard but that you believe in?
Well, I mean, we use an existing platform that we have our vendors for these platforms, but also we've developed it to increase the bandwidth. Obviously, bandwidth restriction is a major issue, not just in India, but across the world, especially during a period of lockdown, you know, when a third of the world's population is at home. So there will be bandwidth issues in this current period of time. But I think that'll get better. And I think as online platforms adapt, I think that shouldn't be an issue moving forward. Saying that, I think you know, we've had a fantastic viewership for most of these webinars, not just from the cities, but when we did our analysis, we realized that doctors from even really small towns and, you know, rural areas also from government hospitals have also been tuning in, and they haven't faced any major streaming issues either. So I think that's a positive aspect of it, that we've literally got access to, you know, good quality academic education to every part of India. I think in that way the webinars have helped to reach out to those who usually cannot make it for conferences or find it difficult to travel to attend conferences.